So I got a joke. We talked earlier about wanting to do some would you rather jokes.
That's good.
So, yeah.
Is this the inaugural?
It is. Yep.
Would you rather joke?
Exactly. And so, I thought about not doing church corny ones.
Yeah, well, of course.
And then I realized that those truly are typically the funnier ones anyway.
Yeah.
So I actually, to be truthful, I already said this one to you, but I liked it so much that I'm going to bring it up.
We got to find it out.
All right. So here's your first would you rather.
Okay.
And by the way, in the comments, those that are watching right now, someone's saying that they're not hearing or seeing anything. Is that true? Check. Did it? Oh no, there's sound.
Yeah, it's kind of like the classic prank a lot of times, first time out, right?
Yeah, right. Stephanie, are you hearing and seeing? Maybe, kind of, sort of. There is a little bit of a delay. But hopefully people are on and hearing and seeing. You're hearing and seeing, right, Spencer?
I'm seeing.
All right. Oh, look at that. Tesha says everything's working. All right. So, by the way, really quick, I guess we should introduce, right? So, Spencer is our producer. Spencer, if you just stick your head back or hand. Oh, you could be anonymous. No one ever really knows who you are. We'll never show his true identity. Just a hand. Yeah, and so then Ben Larson.
Absolutely. Good to be
So
here.
you're elder here at Faith Alliance Church, governing board member, bassist.
Yeah.
You're part of the worship leadership team here. You're going to be stepping into the youth leader helper role.
You bet.
Coming in the fall. So yeah, I've been working on you for quite a while, right? I've been working on you for quite a while.
Yeah.
Glad that we're finally roping you down.
Yeah, that's good.
So, and then my name's Harry Ozer, right? Assistant pastor here at Faith Alliance Church. This podcast was formerly known as the Porch Light Podcast, and kind of a year later, rebranded, coming out with something new. So back to what I was saying at the beginning, and anyone who's listening, you guys put in the comments if you have a good would you rather joke. You can put that in, and we'll answer it to the best of our ability, appropriate as always.
Of
right?
course, yeah.
All right. So my first one is this. It's really simple. Would you rather?
Yes.
Okay. Every time you heard the word what, or said the word what, because if you say it, you heard it, right?
That's right. Yeah.
You had to look up a verse every single time. Every single time you heard what or said what. You know what? I'm going to change it. I'm actually going to make it a little easier.
Okay.
Every time you say what.
Okay.
Would you rather, every time you say what, you have to look up some piece of scripture.
Okay.
Or every time you hear worship music, and I do mean that, hear worship music, whether that's you singing or in, church service, which this would work, or in your car.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Or at the grocery store.
Yeah. Or like
Anyway.
we were in Shield the other day.
Yeah, right. Or
Exactly.
Pizza Ranch. There's not a whole lot of pizza ranches out here in
course.
Montana, but that's a big, Midwest, Montana or Minnesota. Every time you heard worship music, you had to kneel until the song was done. So like just one song, right? So if it's radio, but as soon as you hear it, like until the song's done, then when the song's done, you can stand up. If more worship music keeps playing, then then you can stand up. But so again, would you rather?
I think I'd rather do
say what, and every time you say what, you have to look up scripture, or every time you hear worship music, you have to kneel
till the end of the first
which
song.
includes your car.
Oh man, I've got to say, you got to look up scripture.
I know, but can you go the rest of your
It would be good.
No Christian wants to say,
okay, so
I don't want to open up scripture, but how many times do you say what in one day?
That's what I was going to say, is I would probably modify my verbiage pretty fast. Right? Behavior modification.
Yeah, for real, because that would be so difficult.
You can't escape worship music when you live in a Christian lifestyle in Montana, right? So yeah.
Well, and like you said, there's a lot of businesses.
Oh yeah. It's not like the Bible Belt, but it's more so than
for sure.
Yeah.
All right, I got another one for you.
Okay.
Would you rather every time you sat down for a meal have to eat a scroll first,
Oh man.
or every time you got a glass of water you had to drink a shot of vinegar?
I'm actually gonna go the vinegar route.
Have you had vinegar?
Here's the thing. There's a trick. You got to know what you're doing when you drink it, because if you drink it and think you're just gonna breathe right afterwards, it doesn't work.
Right.
No, it's horrible.
So eat a scroll.
Yeah.
I'm talking like the yucky scroll. Not
Yeah.
Not like just a notebook piece of paper rolled up. I'm talking like real parchment paper.
I think my insides would handle the vinegar better, actually.
You think so?
Yeah, it's all technique.
Man.
It's all technique. Oh.
I think I might do the scroll. Could I just
you can probably pull it up.
Just mash that scroll right up into if I'm having a bowl of soup.
Yeah, just wet it up. Yeah.
Right? Wouldn't you?
Get it soggy. Yeah.
Do you got one for me?
I do have one for you. This is more culinary, right? So
like this. Hey, I like that. Yeah, I'm all about that cooking.
Yeah, they need to know how good of a barbecue or smoker man you are. But here's the question: would you rather have basically not frozen but almost frozen brisket that's 3 days old on a cold day?
You're making me cry inside.
I know, it's horrible. Or ice cream on a really hot day.
Ice cream.
You're gonna walk away from the meat every time when it's cold?
Yeah,
temperature matters that much to you.
Yeah, brisket cold.
A cold brisket sandwich?
I know, but it's dry though. Like meatloaf, if you changed it to meatloaf, I'd have a cold. I used to grow up, we'd have meatloaf and then leftovers was cold meatloaf sandwiches, and that was legit. I don't know, do they do that here in Montana? I've never seen anyone have those out here. I grew up, that was normal.
Yeah, my parents said every once in a while.
Yeah.
It's not like a
when you grow up you have these standard things, right? And so for us, standard was if the meal the night before was meatloaf, the lunch the day after, especially if it was a Saturday or Sunday the day after, the lunch was cold meatloaf sandwiches, right?
Course,
it didn't matter.
It flowed.
Right? It's like 4 boys, right? It's just kind of nothing goes to waste, right? It's kind of like we used to make I'm Polish, right? So pierogies, right? And so you always you cook, you boil the pierogi, so you have a big making party. You make the pierogies, right? And then you boil them. You put a little half and half and some breadcrumbs that have been browned in some butter, right? And then you have your kielbasa next to it. But every time, without fail, right? So that's the way you eat it the first time,
right?
Then all of the succeeding times after it, right, is you throw it in a pan and you fry them up.
Well, that makes sense.
A pot sticker, right? So you get best of both worlds, right? Some people are like, no, all we do is fry them. I'm like, well, you're missing a really cool piece, right?
Yeah. Seeing that
the way they're intended to be,
and the way I've always had pierogies myself. Now, granted, we didn't make them from scratch like you said, but we just boil them and then you throw a bunch of butter and whatever. You just eat them that way. Of course, we never had leftovers, so they're so good.
But
when you guys are doing making,
you're
making a
bunch, right?
See, and that's the beauty of when you're not making them. You don't have to worry
No
about
joke. Tesha and I one time. So back when we're in Wisconsin, we had this really cool Festival of Nations potluck kind of a thing, and so we're sweet, we know exactly what we want to make. So we made raviolis because Tesha's strongly Italian.
Yep.
And we made pierogies because I'm a lot of Polish.
Right.
And our food was a hit. Right, but we had pierogies for weeks because you freeze them because there's no way you can eat them all.
You make a huge batch.
Oh my goodness, we made so many, and it was oh my goodness. A month later, just we got one bag of pierogies in the freezer. So I'm I don't want them anymore. Give them away. I don't want any more.
So we should do a special feature where we pre-record 10 minutes of you making favorite family dishes. I think we should do that in the future.
Little cooking edition.
Yeah, little cooking edition, and then of course we get to eat it, right? So.
Oh heck yeah! Oh, I like eating on camera too. Yeah, because then everyone else is jealous.
Love it.
Okay, here's a good one. Oh, here's a really good one.
Okay.
Would you rather live through a famine or live through the 10 plagues of Egypt?
Ooh. Well, I would say I'd rather live through a famine. I would love to see the 10 plagues, but I don't want.
You'd love to see the 10 plagues,
but not live through them.
You're gonna have to explain that one. Why would you want to see the 10 plagues?
Because
I don't know if I want to see the 10 plagues.
Just to see the awesomeness of something unusual like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. When a river turns to blood, all those frogs, all that stuff is not normal, right?
Yeah.
Famine, it's not ideal, but it's not exactly abnormal.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay, I got one right off the top of my head. You ready for this?
Go for it.
Okay, it's a wifey one. Every time you feel love for your wife, would you rather? Every time you feel love for your wife, you have to put ice down your pants, or
jump. I'm like, there's another option.
Or dump chocolate pudding on your head.
Ooh.
You know what I'm talking about? Like you walk into a room and you see your wife and you're like, dang, I love you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Got to go get the pudding.
Like nothing nothing big. It's just like, I'm so glad I'm married to you. Every time you feel that feeling right there. Whoop. Maybe not like shirt, whatever. Like you have to
mess things up, right?
Let's just take an ice water pitcher.
Okay.
You have to dump that on your head.
Okay.
Or you have to dump pudding on your head. What would you do? Would you rather?
So I'm actually gonna go with the water just for the cleanup reasons.
Just for the cleanup?
Just for the cleanup.
Come on, it's pudding.
I know.
Pudding easy because you get to eat it. Pudding's amazing. Who doesn't want pudding? You don't want pudding?
No, I don't want to waste that much pudding.
You don't want to waste pudding?
Right.
Well, okay. Yeah. All right. Yeah. Do you got another one for me?
So I was actually going to go with the ice water thing, but I'm gonna switch something now. So
okay. Yeah. Oh, because I stole it.
Yeah, you stole it.
Oh,
okay.
I'm sorry.
So back to a food related thing. So would you rather have a cold energy drink on a really, really cold day and you're outside, or a really, really tall, hot cup of coffee on a hot day?
Not cold. Cold with cold.
Cold all the time.
I'd rather be cold any
you're
day.
Polish and you're from Minnesota.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, hot stuff on a hot day. Okay. I don't know. All right, hot stuff on a hot day almost makes me feel...
So I'm getting this sense, Harry, that this is a good series, right? But we need some help from those that can supply some really good ideas in the comments, right?
So Tesha, who just happens to be my wife,
right?
She goes, "Who has to clean it up?" ? I'd rather clean up water. So Tesha's in your side, easy, right. Not even close. Tesha's 100% on your side of things. I get the not wasting pudding thing, but
it would be fun.
Yeah,
way more fun
for real.
Right. So my awesome daughter would say, dumping slime. She's all about slime.
Oh, have you seen that on Nickelodeon? The slime.
Oh yeah.
Where they shoot people with slime.
Oh yeah.
I just saw one where it was Justin Bieber. And
really?
You could tell. Yeah, you could tell though. You could tell he knew it was coming.
Yeah.
And so he's like trying to draw out the rest of what he had to say because he didn't want it to hit, and it just like kept going. I'm like, what in the world? Like, end your sentence. And as soon as the sentence ended, boom, he just got blasted. Yeah, it was hilarious.
Classic.
It was hilarious. Oh goodness.
Very, very good.
Well, Ben, I'm glad that you're joining me in this.
Yeah, I'm excited. It's good.
Like I was talking to you before, yes, I had some fun with the title of this podcast, right?
Yep.
Where are we going? Well, what's the title of the podcast now? Onward and Upward. Yeah. So where are we going? We're going onward and upward.
That's good.
And it was kind of interesting when it came about. So we created Porch Light last year, right? And that did well. We had 5 episodes for that first season, and
right.
Some of them were really well received and things like that. And the original vision and mission and heart behind it was really cool and seemed to catch some traction. But as I was going through it, right, I just kept getting this sense. It's kind of hard it was hard to explain the podcast to people right out the gate. And so as I was going, I don't know, I was just feeling like maybe we need to switch things up a little bit and post-COVID, if you will.
There you go.
And pull in some new things. And so I'm sitting one day, I'm talking to Paul, right? Paul, our senior pastor. And I was just sharing that with him. And in that conversation, he's like, well, why don't you just call it Onward and Upward? And I'm like, yeah. I'll be honest, I don't like every one of Paul's ideas in the same way that he doesn't like every one of my ideas, right? Surprise, right? Really kick you over on that one. But he said it, and immediately it kind of clicked, like, yeah. And sort of behind that, right, is I say that a lot, like as a conversation closer. I never think a whole ton of it. It's just who I am. Is I don't ever want to be stale, right?
No,
I don't want to sit still. Anyone who knows me knows that pretty well. I don't have to say that, right?
Right.
Harry wants to not sit still. Surprise. But so I always kind of end conversations, like onward and upward. Like, we can't change what is. We got to continue to, trudge forward. A lot of times it's with something that's more like frustrating or annoying or something that wish would change or something like that. That's just always the phrase that kind of rolls through my head.
Yeah, it's kind of your way of saying, let's not dwell on the past. Let's not like have a pity party about this situation. We got it. We got to keep moving forward.
Exactly. So I'm like,
onward.
Yeah. And so as I start talking and thinking about it and talking with Paul, right, I'm like, this could actually go somewhere.
Yeah, that's good.
And so I started digging and thinking and praying, and as I did more and more of that, and I started talking to others, including you.
Yep.
And I was like, hey, I'm thinking about switching the name. And almost to a person, I really like the name you have, but I think you're right. I think you need to change it, which was really cool to me.
Right. Get some validation.
Yeah. It would have been maybe a little harder if people were like, yeah, your original name stunk, right? That was terrible. Switch it now. It was like,
at least are gracious enough to not
it's like telling me I'm right, but also telling me I'm wrong, right?
Yeah.
That would have been a lot harder for me to be like, well, whatever. So yeah, almost to a person, it was, I like Porch Light. I like kind of the vibe there. But as we talked about it more, they were like, but I really like what you're talking about, the new direction, the new idea, right? And as we get down to nuts and bolts of it, right? Onward and Upward is just easier for me to explain right out the gate. What's Onward and Upward podcast? We want to continue to encourage you to move onward and to move upward in your faith, right? That's it. And so everything that we bring up, we're going to have a little bit of fun like we did. But everything we bring up, right, I want it to, that's my heart, is if we can help people continue to take another step forward in their faith and continue to take another step upward towards Christ, being more like Him, loving better, having more compassion, having more grace, controlling our tongues better, things like that, right? Like, how cool would that be?
Yeah,
right? And
exactly.
so it, like, Porch Light, though it was cool and I liked it, I was like, I think there's something better. And as we dug through, I'm gonna give a big credit and shout out to Paul. Paul's the one. He was like, well, why not this? And I'm like, that's a really good idea.
Yeah.
And so we rolled with
like
it. And as we rolled with it, I'm like, things just started clicking and started pulling together. And how I've explained it to you before, right, is it's this really cool funnel. Before, it felt like to explain Porch Light was like this really vast, it was like hard to explain. But what we could cover under it felt really finite. Right?
Right.
Whereas now, Onward and Upward podcast feels like the mission vision is really narrow. Like, what it is, where we're going, what we're supposed to be doing. We want to help people move onward in the faith and upward in their faith, right? Exactly. Every day, taking another step forward in their life, closer to Christ, closer to the people around them, loving better. But we can cover so many other things, right? There's a lot that falls under that. Our ability to cover these different topics, I think it opens up a door.
Well, the thing that's awesome about what I think is a change in the format is it gives you, in a sense, a goal to shoot for.
Right.
Not only in the podcast, but in the content. But it doesn't restrict the avenue by which you reach that goal.
Yeah.
So we've got a lot of different parts of the individual Christian life that we can talk about.
Right.
But we have, we're going to be talking about a lot of stuff related to family and kids as well. How do we interact with each other in a way that's honoring to God?
Yeah.
Reflective of Jesus Christ in us, and I guess obedient to the Holy Spirit, and seeing really each of us advance onward and upward in our faith, and that's
right.
There's so many ways to get there, but it is one goal that we can shoot for. And I like it that way. Yeah.
Yeah, and I just feel like it's so much more at peace, right? Of trying to explain it to somebody. I don't feel like I have to fumble over stuff.
No, it kind of falls in
really clear,
right
really simple, really easy. Yeah. And as I've talked to people that maybe didn't know anything about Porch Light, I just talk about, hey, we're rebranding. This is our new podcast, Onward and Upward.
Right.
And I say that, you know, when you talk to somebody and there's confusion, you can see the confusion.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
Okay, when I talked about porch light, it was almost an annoyance for me. And not on anybody. It was just on me going, I got to find a way to explain this better. Because every single time I talk to somebody, their initial face, right? I don't know, can you make a face of confusion?
Oh, yeah,
what does
like,
a face of confusion look like?
I'm not sure what you're
No,
talking
honestly,
about.
here, I'm not going to look. Give me a confused face.
All right.
See if... You ready? You can't laugh.
This is the problem.
You can't laugh.
Yeah, okay.
I want to
Let's
see
go
your
ahead.
confused face.
Okay, go for it.
Yeah, like that,
What?
right?
Yeah. Some
of them were literally like that, like almost obnoxiously, like, what?
What's porch light?
And then as I talked about it, they're like, oh, that's a cool idea, right? But it like initially was just this weird barrier.
Mm-hmm.
We're now almost to a person, right? I say Onward and Upward podcast, and immediately people are like, oh, like a face of, tell me more.
Yeah. Exactly.
Whereas every other time with porch light, it was like, like, okay, you know.
Yeah.
So it's been a cool journey. I shared with you a scripture that kind of influenced this in my life way before Onward and Upward, right? Philippians 3:12 through 16. This is from the New Living Translation. Right? It says, I don't mean to say that I have already achieved these things or that I have already reached perfection, but I press on to possess that perfection for which Christ Jesus first possessed me. No, dear brothers and sisters, I have not achieved it. I love that, right? I love that humility. But then the drive, right? And for me, who I am, like being a red, and for those that don't know why I say what's red, it's SDI. It's a strength development inventory, right? We'll talk about it probably at some point, right? It's a great motivational. It helps you understand your motivations in life, right?
Exactly.
And as a red, right, I want to accomplish things, right? If I'm not accomplishing anything in my life, I have a lot of stress. I have a lot of anxiety, frustration. It's hard. It stops me in my tracks, right? And so I love, for me, I attach to this a lot. No, dear brothers and sisters, I have not achieved it, but I focus on this one thing, forgetting the past and looking forward to what lies ahead. I press on to reach the end of the race and receive the heavenly prize for which God, through Christ Jesus, is calling us. Let all who are spiritually mature agree on these things. If you disagree on some point, I love how Paul puts this. If you disagree on some point, I believe God will make it plain to you, right? The confidence of how he says that, right? If you disagree, it doesn't mean you're right. It just means you need to go back to God because this is God's words, right?
Exactly.
These aren't my words; these are His, right? But we must hold on to the progress we have already made, right? So forgetting the past. When he says forgetting the past, he's not talking about forgetting the progress. No. He's saying you can't change what happened, right? And I think that speaks to a lot of different people's lives where you make mistakes or you missed an opportunity. You were reluctant to go after this opportunity or something like that, right? And all of us have those times. I have those times with my kids probably every week of going, man, I wish I had handled this situation better or something like that. And I love this message of we need to press onward. And that means letting go of the past, but not letting go of the progress you've made, right? And again, for who I am, I'm like, all I hear in that is like, you've accomplished some sweet things, don't forget it, but you haven't arrived.
Right. And
hey, news alert, you're not going to arrive until you're done here on this earth and you're with your Father in heaven, right? Yeah, it was just
the awesome thing
so
too
cool.
about this scripture is that it really does give focus to the fact that it's not, Christianity is not just about saying a prayer, getting your ticket to heaven, and then calling it a day, and just living the life you want to live, regardless of obedience to Christ, the rest of your life. Because you're good, you're going to heaven. Right. No, this is God's calling us to perfection. Yeah, knowing we're not gonna attain it here. No. Yeah. But he's working in us, and we're getting closer to that. Yeah. And that's what's awesome is that we should be in our personhood, in who we are, in our maturity, in our abilities, in our skills, should be advancing every part of our life. We should have a bigger skill set, a bigger understanding of discipline in our own lives. We should understand ourselves better. We should obviously understand what God is calling us to. And obviously, we're going to go through different seasons in life, right? As we're doing different things. We're talking before the podcast here yesterday. We've got a lot of topics related to kids.
parenting
my kids are at a
and
different age than your
families.
kids.
And,
So we're all in a different season there, and you have to have the right skill set and the right mentality to understand how to navigate that.
Right.
But if you're just punching a ticket into heaven and then calling like good, it's like
it's throwing the towel.
It's really dangerous, actually.
Yeah.
Well, opening yourself up to attack.
Well, and I think Paul, I know Paul knows that if everyone is pressing on towards the goal, right? That's what he's talking about. And the goal obviously is coming home with Christ, going to heaven, living this life for him, bringing him glory, being self-sacrificial, right? Being humble, loving God, loving others, right? I came to this world not to abolish the law, but to fulfill the law. Right. And to this I give you, and then paraphrasing it, love God, love others, right? Like the law is simple, love God, love others, right? And that's, pressing toward the goal, finishing the race, right? He talks about that. I press on to reach the end of the race and receive the heavenly prize for which God, through Christ Jesus, is calling us. If we aren't pressing on to that prize, our life isn't going to show, the fruit of someone who's following Christ. Because we're going to be still, we're going to be stagnant, we're going to be, and to that end too, if we don't have a goal in mind of where we're going, like why we're doing it, of course we won't do it. And I wonder if that's sometimes the roadblock, right? That's what's so convicting me, and why, like, again, another log on the fire of wanting to switch the name to Onward and Upward is if I don't have a goal in mind in this life here right now on this earth, why would I do anything?
Yeah.
Really? Like why would I step foot outside my door?
Yeah.
Why would I take time to think about my wife and caring for her and things like that? Why would I spend any time doing that if I didn't have some goal in front of me? I think sometimes that is what hinders us. I don't know. Just what's in my head.
Well, and I think the other thing is you got to remember that God has things for each one of us to do. He has goals for us to do and accomplish, right? He has tasks and certain assignments that have to get done. Yeah. And he created us specifically to accomplish those things. Right. And if you're not engaged in a relationship with him and listening and available to be obedient to that, those things won't get done. A lot of times, those things are related to the life and the improvement of life and most likely the salvation of other people around you.
Right. 100%. Yeah. Let all who are spiritually mature agree on these things. Paul, he's so sly, man. Mm-hmm. I don't mean sly like devious. I mean just like he's got that like dry humor. Like,
that's good.
Like he's cutting it off at the pass. You know what I'm saying? Like how you're like, I know what your response is going to be, so I'm going to say this, knowing that you're going to try to say, well, what about this? And he's going, look, this is the truth. This is what God is saying. If you disagree with it, you need to go back, search your heart, and talk with your Father in heaven. And so it is. It's a phrase I say a lot. I always, I look at, and this is probably another topic for a discussion for another day. I said that weird, but you get it. I've talked to my wife many different times. Like, I watched my grandpa Harry, right, who passed away a few years ago, and that's who I'm named after, right? And to the end of his days, he was still ministering, right? He never, like, I never saw him go, I've reached my twilight season, and just put it on cruise control and just let it all go. Like, that dude, he's still, he was up on a ladder cutting a tree at like 78 or 80 or something. I don't know. He was older, right?
Right.
And fell off that sucker and broke a rib. I remember my dad looking at his dad, right? Yeah. My grandpa, and be like, you got to stop that. What are you doing? But nothing really slowed my grandpa down. He just kept on going, right? My grandpa and grandma, they would over the winter go down to Florida, and my grandma would be like the receptionist at a senior home. Yep. And my grandpa would go be the handyman and reach people for Christ. He'd talk to them. He'd work. He'd doing plumbing. He was a plumber his whole life, and my grandma, for that matter too, who's still alive. My grandpa Harry's first wife died, I think 97 or 98. Grandma Mary Lou, and then he remarried in 2001, I believe, to Grandma Esther, and she just went on a missions trip last year.
That's awesome.
And so, like, I want that, right? Please, please let me be that.
Finish
please
well, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why? Like, why would I let off? Now I've got all this experience, not energy. I know that, right? But experience. Like, please let me be that person, right? I'm watching people. I'm not saying like I'm gonna break the mold and do something no one's ever done.
No,
that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying the exact opposite.
Right.
I'm watching these different people I respect and go, please let me be that. Let me finish my race well. Let me press on to where people are like, dang, he's 85 and he's still kicking butt. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And not because I'm running a 5K marathon or some nonsense.
No, because you're still engaged.
I said nonsense. Sorry, honey. 5Ks are awesome. I hate running. 5K marathons are super difficult.
Oh yeah.
For the record. That's not even a marathon. 5K. Well, okay, that's a perfect example. I feel like that's a marathon for me.
Might as well be.
5K is like just a jog for a lot of people, including my wife.
Yeah.
It's so funny how I think that's a marathon. Right, but I want to finish that race well. I don't want to get into my twilight years and hit the cruise control. In fact, I want to double down on it. Like, I want to see retirement as an open door to like freely give rather than freely take. Does that make any sense?
Yeah. See, and unfortunately, in our society, when you say retirement, of course, that's always talked about in the context of your career, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And I think in the context of your Christian walk, I mean, you can be retired from a career, but fully engaged in what God wants you to do, right? And I hear that's what you're saying with your grandpa Harry and his wife. You know, they were technically retired from their careers, right?
Definitely.
But they were still doing things wherever they were.
Involved. Yep.
Yeah, and they were focused on, sharing the love of Christ and being engaged in life and obviously enjoying the fruits of that. And the other thing, I guess, it's just reflective of the fact that when you become a Christian, you die to your own plan, your own big goals for life. You know, you submit those things to Him,
right?
And you allow Him, because we know by His nature He's got the best plans of anybody, way better than our plans.
Yeah, way better,
way better.
Yep.
And very, very seldom am I going to talk to a person that's in the twilight of their life. Let's say that says, God told me to sit on my butt and watch TV.
Right. Yeah, never heard it. I don't see it.
No,
I've never read it.
I've heard people say, I've earned my retirement and I'm going to relax. I'm going to go golfing. That's all I'm going to do.
Right. And I mean, come on, I'm going to relax a little bit too. Yeah. You're gonna have some fun. You have some freedom to go do things that you haven't been able to do.
Yep.
But is that my goal? Right? Like, I'm going to retire to have the goal of doing me.
And is that His goal for you?
Well, right. Rather, like I talked to my dad. He's 64 and looking forward to retirement. But what I sense in him, right, is not a retirement to go like just sit and do stuff himself.
Yeah. End of year vacation.
Right.
End of life vacation.
But to be free to go do the things that are important to him. Mm-hmm. And not just him, but what God has laid on his heart that's important to him. Right? Like those two don't have to be different. What's important to me, if I'm walking with the Lord, is going to be what's important to the Lord, because I'm seeking Him first. And so, and I think that's kind of what you're getting at, right? Is if I'm seeking Him first, what becomes important to me is already first important to Him.
Yeah, because He's impressed it upon your heart in the context of your life with Him, right?
Exactly.
So He's already dropped those seeds of desire and accomplishment and legacy in another way that He wants you to be there.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah, and it can be an adventure the whole way.
Yeah. It's going to be an adventure the whole way. Let's be honest. Come on. So that's kind of how it all came about, right? That's how it all came around. And that's, honestly, I still feel like we're just like at the tip of the iceberg. And if you know icebergs, right, you only see the top 10% of an iceberg typically, right? The other 90% is below the water. And I'm like, man, we've got so much that we can talk about. On Saturday, hoping that my brother is going to join us on this podcast, my younger brother. Roland.
He has to now. You just announced.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's like no backing out now, Roland. He's probably not even watching this right now, but he will. But we're going to be... remind me, what are we... Holy cow, just had a blank. It's okay, I'll find it.
Yeah. We got actually a lot to talk about.
Oh, yeah. We're going to be talking about the subject of your kids being a leadership team. Right? Something you know about me. I'm really passionate about building strong leadership teams. Mm-hmm. Not a leader, but leadership teams. I think sometimes we get lost in disciple, whereas discipleship, though you want one, you want to continue to produce more than one, and then y'all have to work together. It can't just stop at an individual.
Yep.
Right? It has to at some point come how do we do things together, right? The Bible talks about unity all over the place in the body in 1 Corinthians 12 and how we need to work together, right? Super important. And yet I watch and I see and things like that, and so much disunity, in our world, in our nation, but beyond all that, in our churches, a lot of disunity, a lot of well, you haven't, so I'm not gonna, and because you don't, I'm not gonna, and right, all these unmet expectations and things like that. And so it's something really, really, dear to my heart, especially as a pastor here, is building ministries that aren't reliant on me.
Yeah, and really aren't reliant on one individual.
Well, and that's my point, and take it to the next step. Yep. That it's not reliant on Ben, the elder, but it's reliant on the elders, right? It's not reliant on Harry, the youth pastor, but on the youth leadership team. It's not dependent on Harry, the worship pastor, but on the worship leadership team, and how can we grow and do things together. So I'm really looking forward to that. We need to stop talking about it, because I could spend another hour talking about that, and we want to save that for Saturday.
No, I got a lot of good thoughts about it too. So
go ahead and share. If you had something on your mind, go ahead and share it.
We're gonna hold it. Because,
you sure?
Yeah. So what's interesting about?
I feel bad now. I feel like I cut you off.
No, this is a good tease. So you grew up.
Don't tease me.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. With 5 boys, right? Well, four,
and for people that don't know, we have a 5th on the way. Right. True story. So, we don't know if it's a boy or girl now.
But you grew up with 4 boys
I grew up 3 brothers and me. Yep.
Yeah. So, bigger family than I grew up. It was just myself and my brother in my family. Now, what you don't realize, and because I haven't told you this yet, but leadership was a big deal in growing up in my family as well. But it was a different take, partly because we only had 2 of us. Yeah. And we didn't really come at it the same way that we're going to be talking about. And I like this different take. Part of why leadership was such a big deal in my family is that my dad was a VOAG teacher and was an FFA instructor. And of course, FFA, it's about agriculture and that whole industry, but it's mostly a leadership development. So
just like BPA is very similar to that too.
My parents weren't talking leadership to my brother and I when we were 3, 4, 5, 6 years old. But as we got advanced into junior high and high school, that leadership mentality and understanding the skill set and communication, all that stuff was important. So I'll be able to speak a little bit towards that, but I'm really interested to hear in some of your background, and I always hear from Roland as well about.
Well, of course, because we parent in large part based on how we were parented, right?
That's how we learn.
The information we have is typically pulled from experiences we have. A lot of I think it's just a natural human instinct that we draw from experience first, and then bring knowledge to supplement the experience. Unless we're wise enough and aware enough to go, that experience wasn't good, and bring knowledge in to improve that experience, right? But I'm looking forward to Saturday and having that whole conversation. And I told you earlier, I think that's going to be a 2-parter, right? And so my younger brother, he has 2 kids. Yep. And we've got 4 with 5th on the way. So we're on the really young spectrum. My oldest is 4, right? I literally April 14th, we're going to have a legit 1-year-old, 2-year-old, 3-year-old, 4-year-old for 2 months awesome. Until Harry turns 5 in June. And then you are a little bit further along, right, with Reese in 8th grade and Malia in 4th. Right. But then my hope is to bring on some other men and women that are parents, but their kids are out of the house, right? And so they're on the other side of things, like some more retrospect time of what they did, what they didn't do, what they wish they had done, and gain, experience under, wisdom and stuff like that. Because I always, I talk with Dave about that. I talk with my dad about that. I talk with a lot of different men specifically about, as a father, and what worked, what didn't work. And I have my ideas, right? Like I said, I'm passionate about building disciples for Christ, right? Like
Yep.
building them up, understanding what the Bible says, but also what it means for my life. Like not just knowledge, but take knowledge and put it into action, right? Knowledge without action is useless. It's dust in the hand. So yeah, holy cow. We literally spent 10, 15 minutes just on that right there. And we got lots more. So that's probably going to be a two-parter in the end. But yeah, we've got so many different topics right here. I don't know if you can see this. And that's just some. So we're excited. We're excited for where this is going. We are looking at doing episodes far more frequent. If you didn't notice, we have a beautiful new studio that we've put together.
Let's be honest, it's you put it together, and it's awesome.
I put some effort in it. Spencer, our producer, give me the hand. Yeah. He helped quite a bit too, and Joan Turek, she did all the painting. She painted this whole. Well, that's the thing. Like I was telling you earlier on, I'm a little nervous, right? Because this podcast, as it is right now, has actually been in the making. If you really want to count Porch Light as part of the making of this, it's been in the making for a couple years now, right? I'm pretty sure Joan painted this room 2 years ago with the intention of turning it into this. At least a year and a half ago. I mean, it's got to be 2 years ago. It was a while ago, right?
Well, was it very quickly after you moved out of the space?
Yeah, I moved. Yeah, so when we built the new office and I moved into the new office, she came and painted this thing because I was like, "Hey, I want to turn this into a studio," and she was like, "Yeah, no problem." And she came in and did it for me. It was, awesome. She found the exact paint and everything that was perfect. Yeah, so as you notice, we got some hats and things like that. So these, I like hats. I like hats and I like shoes. I like hats probably more. And so in search of different hats and stuff like that, I found some cool ones. So this just says gospel, but it has the word, in blue, it says go, right? That's so awesome. Same kind of thing we're talking about. Yeah, knowledge is good, but knowledge without action. Yep. And then this one is alive. You know how when you send a text, but you sent the wrong word? And so you send one more text with just that word and like a little star next to it to be like, no, I meant to send this, right? What did I send recently? I sent like help. Like, can you help me with this? And my auto text did hilt or something like that, right? So I put help with a little star next to it, right? And so that hat, right, is talking about how Jesus was dead. Everyone thought he was dead, which Easter is coming up, and we're going to talk a little bit about Easter on Saturday too, right? And that hat is just speaking to how, Jesus is dead. Sorry, excuse me. No, he's not. He's alive, right? And then this hat right here says famous enough, right? The back of it says known by God, right? And the idea, I love wearing this hat because
you wear it a lot, actually.
I actually get a lot of people asking me, like, what does that mean, famous enough? And ironically, they think it's me saying I'm famous.
Right.
When in reality, what the hat's talking about is actually a really humble attitude that I wear that as a reminder to myself. Like, I don't need your approval, or moreover, not even that, I don't need your, I don't need to be known by you. I'm already known by my Creator, right? Like, I don't need to be notable in your life.
That
I'm already notable in God's eyes, right? And so that's why it says that known by God. And because I'm known by God, I'm already famous enough. I don't need to be famous. I don't need my pride to control me. I don't need those things. God knows me, right? Exactly. And then that last one over there behind your head, it's YOLO, right? But it's crossed out, right? You only live once. Yep. And just, So, should we look at a couple of current events here to wrap up our time?
Let's do that. I think it's good. And one of the things that I think, obviously, these two are related to youth and children. And I think they're good. And related to parents, too. I think it's a parent issue. But we're not just going to spend time just in that sphere, but we are going to spend quite a bit of time because so much of being onward and upward is looking to the next generation to make sure we're training.
Definitely. So, thank you for bringing that up. Thank you for bringing that up. Huge piece of my heart. You know this. For a long time, I'm a huge advocate for youth and beyond youth for families. I want families. I always desperately want to see families be strong, to be helping each other, to be growing. For parents to feel like they're valuable, right? Yep. Because that can be really hard, especially when the kid doesn't make them feel valuable, right? Which never happens. Right? Kids, do that all the time. Take the parent for granted, or don't say thank you, or actually get mad at the parent for the parent trying to help them. And, you know, it happens all the time. So parents have a hard role. Yeah. And I'm just on the early side, right? 4 kids, all really young. I'm looking forward to as they get older and things like that. And really, as we said earlier, I'm a red. Like I'm excited for the teenage years. Yeah. And I know no one else, like everyone else I talk to, like, oh, you don't know. And I'm like, I work with teenagers all the time.
No, I think you know.
I'm really excited. Now, I don't parent these teenagers, and rightfully so. I don't want to.
No.
They have their parents, right? But I'm generally excited. But you're right. Onward and Upward, definitely a huge piece of this is this next generation of passing a legacy of faith on, right? And the power that has. Like I was just talking to Parker about that. I was driving with him recently, and just the power that a legacy of faith has, right? When I'm 5th generation follower of Christ, right? So my great-great-grandpa followed Christ, and then so on and so forth down. And that faith deepens, it matures, that you learn. Like my dad, he always said when I talked to him, I had a kid and stuff, and I had another one, I had another one. Right? He's like, just do a little bit better than I did, right? I tried to do my best. I tried to follow what God's word said. I tried to love you. I tried to bring you up. I tried to rear you in the way that he wanted me to do that, knowing that he made mistakes, right? And he looks at me, just try to do a little bit better than me. If you can do better than me, then, and you can spur your kids on to do better than you, right? This thing is going to turn out some awesome kids as we move forward, right? Right. So,
super good legacy. Extremely important.
Yeah,
and
so important.
It takes intentionality.
Well, and in some ways, I'm jealous of my parents-in-law. Right, my parents-in-law are 1st generation Christians, what I would call them, of truly following Christ, being sacrificial to who He is, surrendering their life to Him, recognize Him as Lord and Savior. Right, like I don't like. There's a piece of me that kind of wishes I could trailblaze that. Right, like just who I am. I'm like, that'd be really cool. I'm not on that end. You know, and talking to my wife too, like she gets to be a part of establishing and growing a legacy of faith in her family, and how cool that is. So, but yeah, let's get on to some current events here. Yeah, each podcast I talk to you about, this was a piece I really wanted to bring in, just because I want to talk about what's going on currently. Like we have our ideas, right? A topic, and hey, this is something important we want to talk about, but also there's things happening around here that I think is important too. I don't know. Do you have a thought?
Well, there's no point in doing a podcast if you're not relevant, right?
So I like that.
You got to be relevant. One of the ways you do that is you keep up with what's going on and what society is throwing our way. Yeah. And we got to be paying attention to that, whether you like it or not. We are in a spiritual battle, so we got to be watching.
So Spencer, actually, if you could switch it over. There's a site, it's called cpyu.org. It's Center for Parent Youth Understanding. A phenomenal website. You know, another great one is Focus on the Family, and we'll probably pull from there at different times too. Yep. But this is one that just I think a lot of people don't know about. But they have two different podcasts as well. One is Youth Culture Today and Youth Culture Matters. 2 different ones. Yep. And so fantastically done. I mean, well produced and things like that. But then also there's youth culture news and resources and things like that. And just encourage anybody, cpyu.org. Phenomenal resource. And so we're actually pulling 2 articles today that we're going to talk about shortly from cpyu.org. The first one, kids going back to school in a pandemic are met with another trauma. And so that's kind of this is from USA Today. You know, I don't know how much trauma, that's a pretty big word. That's an aggressive word, right? But also at the same time, like we can't ignore the reality of like the impact, because they're going to be going back to school and they're going to be practicing active shooter drills, right? Right. So yeah, you have 2 kids. They're both Malia goes to Rao still, right?
Yep. So small school, right?
And then Reese goes to the middle school.
Yeah, which is a lot.
I know as a dad, like I don't have any kids in school yet. Harry's gonna be starting half kindergarten in the fall, but they're at home still. You know, like I don't know, like this doesn't impact me a whole ton, but I'm curious your thoughts on it.
Well, it's of course, the initial thought I have as a parent when we were reading this is that it's fortunate that we live where we live, but that doesn't completely insulate us from something like that happening in Sydney. And so, and we'll probably at some point talk about this going forward. But there's enough kids that get very, very depressed and very, very hurt and bitter and angry, and some of those kids end up taking their own life. Now, it's been something that's very disturbing to me. Something that is not good, but it's just another sidestep over to taking out some of their fellow classmates instead of just pulling the trigger on themselves. So it's a super serious thing to think about as a parent,
right?
And how do you appropriately navigate that? And
I was going to say, how do you communicate to your kid that this is I almost said possible reality to kind of make it like softer, but it's a reality because it's happened already. Now, like you said, in where we're living, is it a huge reality, a high probability? I'd have to say, and I hope to say no. It's very low.
Yeah, I'll have to ask my kids tonight if they've ever had a active shooter training drill where they're supposed to react to that. A few years back, obviously you and I are young enough that Columbine was a big deal in our formative years, and they
made a movie of it.
Yeah, I mean it's a big deal, and unfortunately there's been a lot of copycat and other things that related to that. But as a parent, what I'm looking at doing is making sure that my individual child that I'm parenting is mentally prepared to understand how to react. Right. So the idea behind a drill is you want to practice doing something so you do it automatically without thinking. Yeah. And if you go back, you live in the Midwest or even like my parents' generation, they had nuclear warhead drills, where you get onto your desk. I mean,
talk about traumatizing.
Yeah, exactly. So this is, it's
well, that's why I brought
traumatizing,
that up.
Right? Yep. It's potentially traumatizing, but it's not that different than what previous generations had to deal with, right? So, you think back to the World War II days when, if you were a school child in England, air raids and getting ready for air raids, that was kind of normal. Well, which is not good either. But my point is that the trauma happens if a parent is not engaged, and the leadership in the individual school and how they bring it up, how they talk about it is a big deal.
I was just about to say that. What I'm hearing you say is it's not so much about the what is causing trauma, but how you're communicating it, both at home as a parent and also as the school. How are you communicating this? Now, I don't know, and that maybe that'd be something cool for us to bring up a different time too. Is I don't know if our school does this. The article says that right now active shooter drills are required in roughly 40 states, and that actually there isn't a whole lot of evidence of their effectiveness. And so there are some that are saying, because there's not a lot of evidence that they're even helping, why do it, right? But back to your point, I think a stronger point is it really so much about the what, or is it more about, the why, how you explain it and things like that?
Well, unfortunately, we just had a shooting in Colorado in a grocery store, right? So
that's what
wasn't
us on. Right?
Yeah, that wasn't at school. That was somewhere else. Yeah. And we could get into a whole bunch of policy.
Would an active shooter drill being done at school help somebody when they're in public? Well, see, is that something that they should do? Right? Is that something that should actually be more helpful? Is doing these active shooter drills, but in scenarios that aren't just at school?
Yeah, I would say it this way,
and this does defeat the whole purpose.
And this is what I've been thinking about here for a while, since we've been kind of discussing this even before the podcast started. So much of this effectiveness is simply the mental state of the person that's reacting. Right? Yeah. So if you can get that person prepared, and if you do anything with handgun training or self-defense training and those kind of things, a lot of that training is related to keeping your mind engaged in the right way. And not
it's a lot of mental and emotional training, not so much physical.
And so that's going to bleed into the discussion on Saturday, which is how do you build a leadership team in your family, right? Well, part of that is understanding how do you engage in unexpected, stressful situations and respond accordingly. Yeah. And I think in some ways I understand what they're doing with these active shooter drills. I think that the idea is okay, but the implementation, I'm afraid, is really horrible. Yeah. And the way that they're training these kids to respond, not sure if I agree with it. So, so what can we do as parents? Well, we can obviously not let the schools and the administration of the schools be the only voice in how your kid is thinking about these things.
Well, right.
So you got to be engaged in it.
Well, and that's
not saying that they're going to completely be wrong, right?
Way.
Yeah. But you need to be the parent. You need to not, and that obviously relates to a lot of other things related to school and parenting. But be the parent, be the one that's educating your child and how to, be ready for those kind of situations and think through how to react.
Right.
And go out there and find some resources.
Yep. Well, isn't that true though? In a lot of things, that there's sometimes so many good, helpful resources that it kind of ends up breeding, like a lack of engagement. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Well, they're getting that at school, they're getting that at daycare, they're getting that at sports, or they're getting that there. So I don't really need to. When in reality, the simple truth is, parents, you have the greatest capacity of impacting your kid until they leave the house, and even then. Some studies will still show that parents with one call or one word can completely deflate their kid, even when they're 28, 40, right? Like your ability to impact that person, positive or negative, though a lot of parents don't feel that way, and understandably so, right? Because youth have a great way of like not showing their hand right out the gate, even though they're terrible liars most of the time, right? But in this area of the emotional intelligence and things like that, they don't show their hand very much. And so it can be hard to read them, understand them.
But if you're a parent that's really not looking for it and maybe not wanted to see those signs,
you'll
you're not
never
see it.
Never.
Right?
Nope. Yeah.
So it all goes back to whether you're engaged as a parent to really do the job of parenting that God has asked you to do, or you're offloading that to other people. Yeah. And that's dangerous. Well, not that they're not going to do a good job, but they're not responsible for the kid like you are. So
let's look at one more article here. This one's got me just a little bit concerned, just because I talk about social media a lot with parents, right? And I'm constantly, the leadership knows this, I'm constantly watching what's the next, right? Like, so TikTok is huge now, right? But it used to be called Musical.ly, and believe it or not, I had it on my phone back when it was Musical.ly, and it didn't, and it had like 5,000 reviews on Google Play. Like it was a nothing app, right? But I came across this article that is like, what are the top 5, emerging social media apps to be watching for, social media apps, and one of them was Musical.ly. I'm like, oh, that's cool. Checked it out, and I was like, at first I was like, holy cow, this could be a really cool thing and a terrible thing all at the same time. And I think TikTok's kind of turned into that. In the end, some of it's really cool and a great place for creatives to like do some really cool creative things with video and music and stuff like that. But then also it's like it's a black hole for some really bad things too, right? And so this report from Mashable is Instagram right now is Facebook owns Instagram, right? And so they're trying to create a new version of Instagram for kids. Right now, Instagram, you can't have an Instagram unless you're 13 years or older, or obviously unless your parents let you, which there are a surprising amount of parents that will create an account for their 10-year-old, 11-year-old, 9-year-old to be on Instagram. And I don't know if parents are aware of it all the time, but they can literally search and look up whatever they want. Now, I'm sure they're going to put a bunch of barriers on this Instagram Kids, but like anything, over time, those barriers soften. And like anything, it gets corrupted by money. And so, Facebook, not to talk a bunch of smack about them, but they're like any other business. They wouldn't do it unless it makes them money. It's that simple, right? And that's not a conspiracy theory. That's just simple reality, right? Businesses don't do things unless it brings income to them in one shape or form, because that's what they're in business for, is to make an income to support their salaries and salaries of others. Now, there are a lot of businesses that have a great mission and vision to look to accomplish something first, but the simple reality behind that too is they need money typically to accomplish those awesome goals. And so again, as a business, typically you're not going to make many decisions that lose you money, because then you're not going to be able to go and accomplish those goals. You're going to make decisions that keep your monetary flow stable and safe. And so, again, Facebook creating Instagram for kids, money corrupts. It's you see it all over the place. It's hilarious. Facebook was originally designed for college students.
Yeah.
And no offense, adults, I'm one of them. We got a hold of it. Not at the time, I was a high schooler, right? But got a hold of it. And now it's not a huge place for teenagers and college age students. A lot of them are Snapchat and Instagram and TikTok, more like TikTok and Snapchat. Instagram's even kind of faded a little bit too.
Which is why, in some ways, us live streaming on Facebook means we're not going to talk directly to a lot of youth.
Right. But that's why we're on Podbean along with every other podcast like Spotify and Google and Apple and iTunes, Amazon, all of it. And this is gonna be posted on YouTube too.
Yeah,
because Facebook, you're right, it's a growing limited sphere of influence.
Right.
It's a shrinking. Sorry. Right. Not growing. It's a shrinking sphere of influence. It really is,
especially in our society. Mm-hmm. Now I don't know what's going on internationally, but
I don't either.
Well, and the thing that's something that you got to watch with this stuff too is that anybody that's engaged heavily in any kind of social media knows that there's a dopamine hit to especially getting feedback and responses, right?
Yep.
So that's a part of the
inadvertent they create social media to grow an addiction of.
Right.
So you pop out your phone without even thinking and look at it.
Yeah. So my knee-jerk reaction is, well, yeah, why wouldn't you start to hook your kids on it earlier?
Yep.
And so once again, it gets back to who's the gatekeeper of what's going on in your parent or in your kids' lives. It's got to be the parents, right?
Yeah.
So my son is awesome in his patience with his mother and I, in the sense that he does not have a phone. I don't say that to brag. It's just that's a decision that we've made with him. He's plenty engaged in fun Xbox games and other stuff, and he watches YouTube and other things. But there's a certain problem, and I'm going to read this this paragraph out of this article related to kids bullying other kids and picking on them and influence on them. Right. So this says, as the BuzzFeed report points out, the move is eyebrow-raising considering Instagram has historically had a hard time preventing teens from experiencing a bullying or predatory behavior by adults on the platform, though it has added features over the years to address the issues.
Yeah.
Parent advocacy groups have already asked Facebook to discontinue its Messenger Kids product, since social media has been shown to negatively impact child development. And so, like anything else, it's probably got its place. It's got maybe some limited utility, but it's something that you got to be wise about.
Well, and if it's about keeping up with your friends, right? And you have a cell phone already, then you have a cell phone number.
Yep.
Logic would tell me, which means then you could get your friends' cell phone numbers.
Yeah.
And you can easily text.
Yeah.
Right. So, I don't know how. I think for me, my main thing that pops in my head is just be really careful. Because balance in everything is important. You can have too much of a good thing, right? You can even drink too much water, right? Balance is important. And with social media, for young minds, even minds of my age, 30 and under, social media can be a vice, right? It can really be something that you end up running to instead of, running to your word or running to prayer, spending time with God, running to people with wisdom, like real wisdom, not just some random person on the internet saying what you want to hear, but someone who actually loves you and cares about you, willing to say what you don't want to hear but need to hear, right?
Well, and
you don't get that on social media. You don't get somebody that truly loves you and says, I know you don't want to hear it, but here's truth, and I love you, and I'll walk this out with you. Typically, I don't see it very often, and I don't read articles about the amazing advancements in social media that have brought new life to people struggling with anxiety and worry and depression. In fact, it's the exact opposite. It's creating that in a lot of ways, like you said, with bullying too. So,
and I think a lot of the algorithms that feed you certain information as well. I think, and we both know individuals, especially in the adult side, that they live in their own echo chamber that they've created.
Yeah.
don't get challenged mentally by anything that's going to potentially could burst the bubble and bring a different take
well,
on it.
It's like
That's very dangerous.
Yeah. Who wants to be told they're wrong?
Right. Nobody does. Yeah.
You don't. No one wants to be said what you're doing is wrong, or here's a hard truth. You're too much this, or I see this leading you down this road. No one wants to hear that. It's the wise. It's the wise and the humble that receive it.
So there's danger for an adult to live in an echo chamber, but it's really dangerous for a kid to be developing within an echo chamber like that. That's not properly challenging their brain, and that's partly what they're saying is that there's concern that this constant use and dependency on social media and something that's instant as Instagram would be for kids is going to wire their brains in a different way. That's not going to allow them to function as effectively in a normal kind of non-online way of dealing with people. Yeah. And as somebody that has spent quite a bit of time in the private industry, you got to find good employees that can actually engage in a day's worth of work without looking at their phone every 5 minutes.
Right. Well, I find that I go through kind of I get rid of some social media apps every once in a while. Just a season of especially when I've noticed that I sit down, I pull up, and I look. And it's like, oh man, without even thinking, there's like you breathe without thinking.
You're standing in line in the grocery store.
All of a sudden, your phone's in front of your face at this specific app, whether it be Facebook or TikTok or Instagram, or maybe it's solitaire. And every dry moment you have in life, you're pulling out and playing solitaire. I don't know what it is. There's a million games on your phone that you can play, and that's kind of something too. Like, is that really productive time for my mind?
That's true.
Is that productive time for my life? To be sitting, like I've got a dry time, so I've got to spice it up. Like, what happened to you got a quiet time? Let it be a quiet time.
Yeah, let your brain rest.
And when I say that, I struggle with that the most, right? I am not a quiet person. I don't enjoy quiet. In fact, quiet is awkward. Quiet is uneasy to me, right? But you're seeing an increasing push to keep things as busy as possible. Right.
Yep.
So
keep your mind going all the time, and I see it.
Yeah.
We see it out here all the time. We live in eastern Montana. It's not exactly like we got.
Well, right.
To do.
I really love where we live. Being able to call this home, right, is, I often say in some ways we live kind of in this bubble, being so removed from a city.
Right.
And I mean that in a positive way, that some of the rushes and pushes and like this crazy fast pace, we're a little insulated from. And man, if there's youth listening to this ever, I know there's a lot of kids that are like, man, as soon as I graduate, I want to get out of here. And it's like, don't take for granted the positive that you have here.
Right.
Because you'd be surprised how fast paced the city is, right? And how much it can and get you really going and worked up.
Yeah, there's
and then all of a sudden you're struggling with all these other things because you have all these new expectations that everyone around you is doing all this, and well, why are you spending all your time doing these things, right? So, but Instagram for kids makes me nervous. I hope Facebook does its due diligence and really puts a lot of safeguards on there. I'm thinking of pornography. I'm thinking of bullying. I'm thinking of reaching out and pedophile. I'm thinking of all these bad things that can come. Because what is to stop some 55-year-old, man logging in to a kid's Instagram account and making one
and acting like he is one?
I mean, it's just, ooh, parents be careful. That's all I'm saying. Parents be careful. You and I both know, especially in this area, child trafficking, things like that.
Yep.
It happens a lot.
Yep.
Happens a lot. And parents be vigilant. It's hard to talk about those things because no one wants to talk about those things because they're scary things, they're hard things, but they're reality, right? I talked with a couple different law enforcement people over the last 5 years, quite a few actually, not a couple, right? And that's definitely something that's always on their radar and something that happens more frequent than people would like to know. And it's kind of like, ooh, it's scary. So creating a platform that is just for kids, so some creep doesn't even have to go look. It's just be careful. Please be careful, parents. Be careful, kids. There are bad things, bad people out there. Something can be really started with good intentions, innocently enough, and be used for all the wrong things. And like you said, an engaged parent doesn't have me nervous. Or an engaged parent that has limitations to when that device is used, how long that device is used. Like there's monitoring apps that parents can do, accountability apps, right, where you can have a certain amount of time allotted for different apps. And once you've hit 30 minutes, that's done for a 24-hour cycle, you know? And I think those are great, not because you're controlling your kids, but it's setting boundaries to help build healthy habits. And the hope is that, again, a parent, okay, so Paul says this a lot too, right? Rules without relationship equal rebellion. The three R's, right? Yep. Rules without relationship equals rebellion. So parents, you can't just put rules on your kids, not a relationship with them, and then at the end of the day go, oh, why did they rebel? It's, okay, instead of doing that, focus on where's my relationship with this kid. And if they're rebelling, that's where I need to start first. Not with the rule, which we always try to go to. But if they're not following the rule, my gut reaction first needs to be, where's my relationship at? And bolstering that. If my relationship grows, the rule will follow suit. Yeah. If my relationship tanks, that rule is going to be some big obscure thing that you'll never see happen. And the kid won't understand the rule either, because now they're seeing it not followed by you, right? Like, so, holy cow, we could get going on that one too. But yeah, parents, Instagram,
yeah, that relationship is really about trust.
It is. It is.
Your kids got to trust that what you're telling them in the rule side of it is there for a reason.
Totally.
And if you don't have a relationship in which there's mutual trust, the rule is not going to carry much weight.
Yep. Well, right on. Well, thank you, Ben, for joining me on this. Ben is going to be my co-host from here on, and looking forward to that. And we're going to have plenty of different guests and people joining us. We are hoping on joining you again on Saturday. Spencer, thank you again for being our producer for this. Give me that hand. Thank you. And we are so happy that those of you that jumped on to watch this live joined us. If you watch this later, don't hesitate to throw something in the comments. Oh, my grandma Esther is watching. Look at that. Throw something in the comments. We are going to continue to do Would You Rather and some other jokes and stuff like that. Beginning to have some fun. So if you have something that's really good, you can throw that in there. Yeah. So I'll leave you with this. Silence is golden. Duct tape is silver. All right. Thank you guys for joining us on Onward and Upward podcast, and we'll see you guys next time. See you later.